Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Breakpoint Show. It's still 2024. I think it's February 9th.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, February 9th. It's been a busy week. So looking forward to this weekend. It is a Friday. So TGIF. I don't know if they have TGIF over in Europe. Uh, but uh, but yeah. So it's a Friday. We're going to talk about .NET Framework, and if you want to move up to .NET Core or just now .NET and ASP.NET Core, it's kind of strange the naming of them still. But if you do want to bring a .NET Framework up, how do you do it, or should you do it? And some gotchas. So, yeah, I think that there are so many companies and so many people that have old ASP.NET apps, maybe web forms. Now I know web forms can be moved up to .NET or ASP.NET Core now, but at one point they couldn't be, and you had to like figure out a way to get your web form app up into. Back then it was probably ASP.NET Core 1 or 2 or something. But I mean, what are you guys experiencing out there when you guys talk to clients and customers?
Well, I recently had on JetBrains TV, go like and subscribe there just to kind of get content from JetBrains. But see how I did that cross promotion? Perfect.
Wow,
but
amazing.
No, but I recently did a live stream with Isaac Levin, who did a talk about migrating from .NET Framework to potentially newer versions of .NET. And I started the live stream off with an interesting factoid. According to the 2023 JetBrains Developer Ecosystem Survey, 45% of .NET devs, even today, the ones surveyed by JetBrains, are still using .NET Framework in some capacity, right? And if you look down the list, that's still the largest group of .NET devs working today. So folks who are on the latest versions of .NET are actually in the minority when it comes to usage of .NET, right? So it's still a struggle. And, with .NET 9 coming up, I see that gap becoming really, really hard for a lot of people to kind of bridge at this point. So we're seeing it, like you mentioned, with web forms. That's tough to migrate. We're seeing it with potentially with like WinForms applications and things like that. Like obviously those can be moved to .NET Core, but it's a hard business sell to go to your stakeholders and say, look, our team needs about a year or maybe even 2 years of software development to upgrade our production applications. Oh, and by the way, by the end of this 2-year cycle, we're going to be exactly where we are right now in regards to features. So it is a difficult conversation to have from a technical to non-technical perspective. So I definitely feel for a lot of people who are kind of stuck in this situation where they want to upgrade, but it just doesn't make business sense, right? So that's what I'm hearing. That's what I'm kind of seeing from folks in the community. Martin, what are your thoughts?
So I've also been watching the same live stream the day after, so you can actually go to YouTube and look at the recording there. More cross promotion. I was actually shocked that in the chat there were people who were saying they were still on .NET 1.1 even. I think that was the lowest version someone was still on, and that was not .NET Core 1.1, but actual .NET Framework 1.1. I do hope that that's not the majority of cases, but it it shines through Stack Overflow, through JetBrains data, and apparently Isaac's experience as well, that a lot of people are indeed still on full .NET framework, and it's hard to migrate. So one thought I had there is that a big bang, let's upgrade everything in one go is probably something that is never going to happen for the reasons that you just mentioned. Nobody sees the value of just staying in place feature-wise for 2 years while you finish a migration. But on the other hand, I kind of have this gut feel that it's like a lot of technical debt that you might have in your applications, right? When you stand still and don't do NuGet updates, for example, for a year, you will be surprised after a year how many packages have broken, have changed, have breaking changes and whatnot. So it's something that you kind of have to do continuously, if not only for security reasons and so on. So I'm wondering if you do the groundwork and you get your first migration onto .NET Core going, how hard would it be to sort of gradually migrate everything over until there's nothing left to migrate over?
Yeah, I see where you're coming from. You're kind of building, you're doing a modular migration. And I have seen that where people will take parts of their application, and it's easier to do, I think, in ASP.NET because you as long as the application has the same styling between the two, you can kind of still have that not fool the user, but make the user feel like they're using the same application. There might be maybe some performance or some other factors that may feel a little different, but we have done that where we've tried to take parts and especially I think if you take a look at your application and find the parts that are having the most issues, like there may be parts that are perfectly fine not being migrated, and then there's other ones that maybe need upgraded controls or maybe some advanced features where you were going to have to put some code in the client in the browser to do some special functionality. But yeah, we have done that. I mean, the other thing is either you have the two extremes, right? You don't move, because if it's not broken, don't fix it. And that's a valid argument, is if there is no reason for you to move up to .NET 8 or now looking forward 9, why do it? If no one's complaining, if you're not having issues in performance or anything like that, why? And then the other extreme is just rebuild it. I mean, if you're going to spend 2 years like taking your existing functionality up to the same point, why not just take another team and start over? I mean, so those are the two extremes, and then you have everything in between. Khalid, you had a great hot take from when you were doing that webinar with Isaac, and I didn't want to steal your thunder, but maybe you can explain a simple thing that some developers can do to make things pretty nice for their .NET framework experience.
Yeah, I mean, excuse me. Yeah, one of the things, it seems obvious now when Isaac said it, but one of the obvious things is that .NET Framework is part of the Windows operating system, right? So in some capacity, Microsoft has to support .NET Framework essentially in perpetuity, at least in our career lifetimes, right? So if you can just get your apps upgraded to .NET Framework 4 latest, then you will at least get support in regards to like security patches and those kind of things, right? So maybe the goal isn't to try to move from .NET Framework to .NET Core. Let's just call it .NET Core because I'm tired of I'm tired of making that distinction. Maybe the goal shouldn't be so far away. Maybe it should be towards .NET Framework 4.8 or latest. So that was kind of an interesting comment by Isaac, but it makes complete sense for a lot of organizations because ultimately .NET Framework still has pretty decent performance. It doesn't operate at the performance level of, say, .NET Core in terms of resource utilization or requests per second. But we have to remember, again, .NET is used in a lot of like medium to small enterprisey kind of shops where technology isn't about serving millions of people, but about serving a small group of individuals doing their jobs day to day. And you can take .NET Framework very, very far without being on the latest. So I thought that was kind of an interesting take and makes total sense. I will add, though, that the chat was really lively during the live stream, and an individual had upgraded from .NET 2 to .NET 4.7. But they had mentioned that their experience was so painful.
So this was .NET Framework 2 to .NET Framework 4.7. Okay.
Exactly, yeah. And that individual had said that their experience was so painful that they will not attempt a 4.7 to 4.8 upgrade, which is interesting to say because like you would think that 4.7 to 4.8 would be like the easy change. So again, like maybe this kind of hints at the bigger problem with these migrations is like it's not so much technical, but it's like political and emotional will to kind of like trudge through these things. Like I'll ask you folks, Martin's been a consultant, you've worked in big organizations, Chris, like have you ever dealt with users of your system that are just so burnt out and tired and like they know maybe the current situation isn't ideal, but the prospect of going through a painful upgrade and changes to something is the fear of the unknown too much for those users? And how do you quell that? How do you help those people maybe get on board with a potential upgrade?
Well, I think the easy answer there, and that's an answer that has a lot of baggage, but the easy answer is make it better. So the moment you introduce change, unless it is the status quo or it gets worse, it will never be accepted. But if it's actually better in terms of usability or performance or whatever, people are going to be just fine with that. So maybe that's .NET 2.0 to 4.7 upgrade will have been painful. Absolutely, I can imagine. I actually worked recently with a customer who was on 4.8 and assembly binding redirects and all of that stuff. That is just no longer there in the new .NET Core worlds. And that is better. And if you as a development team are interested in removing that pain, then I think you're actually making development better by starting that migration and losing some of that pain that you will probably be running into every single time you want to update a new kit package or make a change or add a new assembly reference in your projects.
Yeah. I mean, I have like a story. I could talk for 10 minutes on this, but I won't. So I basically started a project. Well, I'll tell you the synopsis. So I did a government contract to take a 19, like basically this application was built like in the early 80s, like in a console. It was a console app that, and we all remember old VB, like VB 1 and 2 that ran in the console that tried to look like an application, what we think of as an application now. And these government employees, they're all within 10 years of retirement, and they didn't want a new application. I came in and tried to build them a new application. Nothing was going to really make them happy. But so that is one thing that you need to make sure that you need to survey your users and say, hey, like, if we upgrade, do you even want, I mean, is there anything that's impacting you or your job to make this upgrade or this kind of, to make it worthwhile? Because it is going to be a disruption to your users. And I think we think so much about technology that we forget about the human side of our applications. And that's why I go back to, if it's not broken, don't fix it. Like, just because you can upgrade, yeah, if you can just upgrade and get performance improvements, that's awesome. But if it's going to cause impact to your users, you have to think about that. The other thing is, none of us think about, we're all geeks, is money. It costs capital for like a company. It's a capital expenditure to do all these upgrades. So, I mean, that's the other thing, is a company has a budget and put money aside for moving up. And like what we were saying in the beginning, how can I go to like a CTO or a CEO or owner of a company and go, yeah, we're going to do this big upgrade. It's going to be awesome. But in the end, it's going to look the same, and it's going to behave the same. It might be a little more performant. It might improve performance-wise, but you're getting the same exact product. They're going to go, and how much is it going to be? And you tell them, and they're going to go, no. And I think that's probably 85% of all migration discussions come down to that. I bet you, like, people tell the owner, or the person that writes the check, like, it's going to cost X and take Y amount of time, and that person just says, no, it's not broken. We're not gonna do anything about it.
But
So
then
not trying to be
logic,
a like negative Nelly.
No, I don't think you are. I think it's realistic. Like, in the tech world, we're very much like hyped up. Like, all right, latest, greatest, going to get 10 billion trillion requests per second when I upgrade to version X or whatever. And again, the reality is, yeah, there's a human element to it, and you got to like come back to earth. You got to come back to reality sometimes. Like, so yeah, it's not fun to hear it, but it's real. It's like a reality check. So go ahead, Martin. Sorry about that.
I was going to comment that at some points, though, the Windows Server 2000 that is running underneath someone's desk hosting your current web forms application is going to topple over and may not be serviceable anymore. And that means at that point, you kind of have to migrate, right?
Yeah.
But then
I was going
to make a point out of that, as that should be a good reason to migrate and actually start thinking about migrating. But maybe hearing Chris's story about the human side of things, maybe it's better for that machine to fall over at some point and just redo all of the work whenever it happens, because then people have a reason to believe in why you are actually doing the upgrade, because the old stuff is just no longer there.
Well, I don't know about that, Martin. That's okay. So I have
that's
to.
Sadistic.
Yeah, that's.
I mean, but that causes more of a disruption. If you're, I would much rather have a plan like, hey, why don't we take the software that's sitting on this 10-year-old, 15-year-old box that is sitting in the closet, and put it up in the cloud and just put the software on a Docker container and push it up into Azure or AWS. And it's the same software. We're just putting it on a different quote unquote server, or just buy a new server. I mean, hardware's so cheap nowadays.
I mean, to go back to Martin's point, though, specifically, and to what you're saying, Chris, it's like there, no pun intended, but there are tectonic plates underneath us all that are constantly shifting. So it's like, to think that nothing is changing, air quotes, is kind of naive, right? Like everything is changing all the time. And it's like, have you ever taken a vacation, like a 2-week vacation, come back to your laptop, open it up, and realize like you have 3,000 updates ready to install? It's like, that's the world we live in. Like, everything is moving all the time. Also, we need to call the cops on Martin because I'm worried. Martin, put the gas can down. Put the matches away.
What?
Dude, you just told people to let bad things happen. We gotta
let your server die, and then you can justify. You can then go to the owner and go, look, we need to upgrade. Yeah, your app's going to be down for 3 weeks, but
right.
Chris, the point I really wanted.
We need an intervention.
The point I really wanted to make is that at some point that is going to happen. So not planning on any contingencies, whether that is, like you say, lift and shift to the cloud or look into migrating and so on, is just not an option at this point, I think.
Well, go ahead, Chris.
It comes down to, it depends. I mean, I think, God, you basically could say that for every episode that we've probably recorded.
We should rebrand our podcast.
The It Depends podcast. Yeah, It Depends show. Yeah, but it does. So, yeah. I mean, sometimes you just have to bite the bullet and just do new development. I mean, just start fresh. Because remember, you build up all these new ideas, and I'm sure there's tons of ideas from business people, the end users, the developers, everything, even the administrators talking about like, hey, we could put this up in the cloud and use some cloud architecture patterns to like break up this application. Maybe it was a monolithic application before. We're going to look at breaking it up and do, I don't really like saying microservices, but making it more modular so that if this happens again, we can just kind of upgrade different pieces of the system or architecture or whatever you call it. Mm-hmm. So there is a case that says, you know what, like it's like a car. I mean, you drive a car for 10, 12 years, and unless it's going to be a classic, you get a new car. I mean, I'm sorry, the world is a little more disposable now than it used to be. I mean, like as an example, my mom had a washer and dryer, laundry washer and dryer. It lasted for 30 years. I think it was still working when she passed away. And like since then, here in my house, we've gone through like 3 washers and 3 dryers. And to fix them costs more than just buying a new one. Mm-hmm. But sometimes you need to do that. Sometimes you need to bring that new innovation into your workplace and get something new. And I mean, and we could talk about like building applications that match other existing applications, UI and user experience and stuff like that to help users and stuff. But I'm rambling. Go on.
Go ahead, Martin. You're itching.
You were about to say something. I saw it.
I mean, you know, it does always, it depends, right? Like I think the first step to any upgrade is, you know, a lot of companies are built on skill silos. The dev department, the business department, the executive suite. Like, I think a lot of development teams would benefit if they want to upgrade to like try to bring more people into the upgrade process and have a non-technical side to the plan, right? So before starting thinking about all the technical pieces, think about the human impact and the human benefits to this upgrade. Like what is like a good example is .NET. The latest versions of .NET are less resource intensive, right? So you're going to save on potentially hosting costs. Like that might be a good investigation to do within your organization. You know, if you have a background job that's taking hours to run, but you rewrite it and it runs a .NET Core within minutes, now you have operational efficiency that is interesting to business folks, right?
Yeah.
So again, there's like a technical side to it, but getting everyone in the company on board to talk about this as like, this moves us all forward, not just the tech department, not just the dev department.
Yeah.
I think is a important first step in any upgrade,
Sure.
right?
And I think we hit on a few other things, like look at where your application's at. Like Martin hit on the thing, if you're running your application on a older server with an old version of Windows Server, like get it on a new server and get a newer version of Windows Server. They're going to be quicker. If you're using SQL Server, 2008, move it up to SQL Server 2019 or 22, and that will give you performance gains. Like there's things that you can do to make, like if you're on a really slow network at work, like talk to your IT department and see about upgrading the Wi-Fi or upgrading the cat cable or upgrading your Ethernet infrastructure to give you a bigger pipe. So there's lots of ways that you can improve the performance of your application and not even touch the code. So you have to, I mean, I think you hit it on the head, Khalid. You have to bring everyone together and talk about the benefits, sorry, and the drawbacks, and talk about ideas and get everyone's input, because someone may have an idea that takes a week and costs next to nothing, or is just some kind of upgrade that will drastically improve your experience.
Yeah. I will also add, like, it's important to evaluate your reality inside of your organization and your dev team as well, right? So, like, we all work under constraints, restrictions. So, like, there's always like an ideal utopian scenario we could be working under, but you have to kind of accept the reality and work within your constraints. So make sure that any kind of work that you've planned towards an upgrade, whether it's from .NET Framework version 2 to 4.8 or .NET Framework to .NET Core, that you're doing it with a realistic understanding of your constraints, right? Maybe you have constraints around knowledge, like obviously, like I haven't looked at a global ASAX in forever, and every time I see it, it freaks me out, honestly. Or like the old CS Proj format. But if you live in .NET Framework, that's going to be familiar to you. But if you move to .NET Core, that whole world's completely changed, right?
Yeah,
so you
that's
kind of
true.
have to understand your knowledge and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So,
But that also kind of adds a flip side to things, where if you as a business want to still be around in say 15 years from now, the longer you keep that application around, the harder it's going to be for a lot of people to understand the
Yeah.
older or previous version of that CS Proj file, for example.
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's a good point. Like that's, I used to be a manager as well. And the difficulty is making sure that you're shifting with the market so that when you need to hire new talent, we're old. Sorry, folks. I know if you're just listening to this, we sound like 20-year-old, bodybuilders, but no. Yeah, you have to keep shifting with the market to find continual new ideas and new talent that could come in and keep supporting your business. So again, that's a good reason to tell people like, hey, you need to upgrade.
And before we start wrapping up, I've been a leader, a manager, and you want to also keep your existing developers and technical people excited about what they do. And if they're just working on the same old .NET Framework 2.0 application year after year, some of those people you're going to lose them because they're not. So it's a very complex ball of string that you have to manage, and it's not all technical. There's lots of stuff beyond technology that you have to keep track of. I always say if I didn't have to deal with the people side of my career, I would love my career 100%. So, but so in the end, it's a complex story that you need to really sit down and plan out and get everyone's input beyond just the tech team or tech teams that are going to potentially do the work. You have to talk to the people that pay for the work, that use the application, that support the application. Yeah, it's a big story. I mean, it sounds simple, but it can really cause a lot of disruption and a lot of pain.
Yeah.
Any final?
Well, I guess to wrap up one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna ask like one last final to kind of wrap it up. Like, would you folks like to upgrade from .NET Framework? Like, if someone came to you and said, "Hey, I have this bag of money. It's a big bag, very big. It could buy Martin a Lamborghini almost, right? I have this big bag of money. Do you want to spend the next 2 to 3 years of your life upgrading from .NET Framework to .NET Core? Would you want to do it?"
I would probably say yes to the question, just for the fact that that in the end you might end up with a nicer application, and depending on what you encounter in the application, because you haven't put any constraints around what is in there, what has to be upgraded, etc. But I think it's a nice challenge.
Yeah, I would say yes, but let's talk about it, because if you sat down and said like, that same amount of money, you can get a new application with improved functionality and improved user experience and improved performance. Why not go there? So again, it depends. But if someone just came in and said, and I've had this experience where people have come in and said, we need this upgraded to this, and you go, okay, it's going to cost this much, and then like after 3 months they just go, okay, you're spending too much money, we're done. And it's like, but yeah. I'm again, sorry to be negative, Nelly. I just it's that type of week. But any final,
yeah.
what final thoughts?
I was going to say, like, so if anyone out there has a big bag of money they would like to give Chris, Martin, or I, please just
Sure,
bring it to us.
I'll take a big bag of money. So, but yeah,
go with
any
the green
final
Lambo.
thoughts? Martin, what's your final thought on today's episode?
I love being in the new .NET, and I would not like to be in the old .NET for project files reasons and many more. But I do think that it's perfectly fine to remain on the old .NET, and I do that in between air quotes, because there's nothing wrong with that. It is still supported, and it's going to be supported for a long, long time.
Yeah. I ditto everything Martin just said, so I agree.
Yep.
100%.
Yep. And just remember, it's not just technology. It's the greater core of everything around your application, what your application brings to an organization or a user base or a community. So awesome. Well, we have reached the end. So Khalid and Martin, I appreciate you both being on the show this week. Not that it's our show, being on our show this week. Yeah, so we'll wrap up and say goodbye. And if anyone has ideas for shows, for new topics that we can talk about, or you want to learn more about, please find us on social media. You can go out to our website, breakpoint.show, and send us messages, or if you're on YouTube, put them down in the comments down below. If you're on YouTube, subscribe. It'd be nice to get to 10,000 users. We're not even close to that, but let's go for a goal of 2024, 10,000 followers on YouTube. Follow us and give us a like. It's the only way that the algorithm will find us, if you give us a like. So thank you, boys. And we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Yeah. Bye, everybody.